Integrative medicine simply means you see the whole person and you have different tools in your toolbox. You might use herbs, you might use something else. Functional medicine is it's sort of like a subset of integrative medicine, but it's a thing unto itself. It teaches you to look at the underlying processes of what's going on and to fix the basic processes rather than just fix the symptoms. So, if you have inflammation, which is a process, it may show up as blood sugar instability. It may show up as Alzheimer's. It may show up as perimenopausal symptoms. So you see how it's very, very different than how a conventional doc would look at those things.
To the Warriors at Work show. This is Jeannie Coomber, your guide and host. This is a show for men and women in the workplace who want to move from the predictable to the potent. This is your weekly dose of inspiration with an edge. I talk with CEOs and shamans, sports marketing executives and therapists. All of us are like-minded thinkers and doers who tell stories, share wisdom, and challenge each other to have the best life possible inside and outside the office. Welcome to your Warrior Conversation. Hey everybody, it's Jeannie. I am thrilled to bring to you someone from my personal circle, Dr. Wendy Warner, who is a functional doctor that I have worked with for the better part of 4 years. She specializes in integrative wellness, and she shares with us really what optimal health is all about in this conversation. It's something that's been near and dear to my heart after losing both of my parents in a very sudden manner. Took an opportunity to take a look at my health and my well-being, and she has changed my life. And I am so grateful that I get to bring her wisdom to all of you. She started her practice in more of a conventional medicine way. She was an OBGYN practitioner, and she had already started to practice integrative holistic medicine. 2004, she founded Medicine in Balance, and that practice at that time is comprised of many different practitioners. And then in 2022, she took the practice almost entirely online, saving patients driving time, and allows for everyone to be seen in more of a telehealth environment. And her vision is to help patients just achieve vital health. And she is brilliant at searching for underlying causes, whether it's physical or energetic. And she really looks at the root of all of your challenges. And she's brilliant at simplifying and explaining things in a way that's very applicable to your life. So it is my pleasure and honor to bring to you Dr. Wendy Warner. Enjoy. So welcome, Dr. Wendy Warner. I am so excited to have you here with me, Warriors at Work, to have this conversation. Thank you again for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So what's fun about this is you've been such an integral part of my life for the last number of years. And I get to turn the tables on you and get for you to share your wisdom with a much broader audience. And so what I want to do is first take a big step back. And I want for you to share a little bit about your story. You practice integrated functional medicine. And I would love for you to describe your journey into this space.
Okay. I did the usual college, medical school, residency, trained in conventional OBGYN, did conventional OBGYN training, practice for 14 years. Now, very early on, it's really corny. Very early on, I figured out that I needed to deal with my own PMS, or nobody was going to work with me for more than about 3 months. And I did not want to do daily Prozac, which is what I was trained I was supposed to take. So for the 3 or 4 days that I yelled at people. So I honestly don't remember now how I even found this, but I realized I'm not the first person who's had to deal with this. There's got to be some other way to handle it. And I was really interested in getting into botanical medicine at the time because I'm a gardener, and found the right plant, It worked beautifully. And I kind of kept it to myself because we're talking the early 90s. No docs did this kind of thing back then. And I was brand new in the area and I didn't want to get run out as some kind of weird witch doctor. So kept it quiet. I eventually took pity on a patient who had the same symptoms that I had when she burst into tears and said, I think my husband's going to divorce me. So I said, okay, go to this health food store, get this, take it for 3 months, call me back. It worked. Her friends found out about it. They were happy. And I realized, okay, maybe I'm not going to get run out of town. So all the time that I was doing conventional OBGYN, I was actually learning about integrative medicine and then functional medicine myself. And I was getting training in botanical medicine and lots of other cool stuff. And at some point, some of my business partners were not very happy about it. And we had a big blow up and I started my own practice. It was an awesome, awesome place. I had all these cool practitioners under one roof, everything from acupuncture and massage and energy medicine, shamans, stress management guys. I mean, like all kinds of things. It was great. 18 years. COVID kind of changed all that. And so now I closed my brick and mortar and I'm doing fully telemedicine consultations only. And it's fun. And I do a lot of teaching. I teach for the Institute for Functional Medicine and I teach for David Winston's Center for Herbal Studies and then do a lot of like webinars and things for different people.
Wow. What an interesting journey. And where I think it would be really helpful too is I think people do not understand what integrated functional medicine actually is and how it's different from quote unquote traditional medicine. So I'd love for you to define that for us.
Okay. And I actually, conventional medicine, the way I was trained is you basically try to fix the symptoms and make people happy. And everybody, and I think this is most patients' experience also, different doctors kind of stay in their lane. And so you're not really being seen as a whole person. In my mind, integrative and functional medicine are slightly different. Integrative medicine simply means you see the whole person and you have different tools in your toolbox. You might use herbs, you might use something else. Functional medicine is it's sort of like a subset of integrative medicine, but it's a thing unto itself. It teaches you to look at the underlying processes of what's going on and to fix the basic processes rather than just fix the symptoms. So, if you have inflammation, which is a process, it may show up as blood sugar instability. It may show up as Alzheimer's. It may show up as perimenopausal symptoms. So you see how it's very, very different than how a conventional doc would look at those things. Because in conventional medicine, those are all different.
Right. Well, it's interesting to give the background on why I came to you. And I think a lot of people that are watching and listening are going to relate to this is, I've been working for a number of years. I have probably what you would characterize as like sort of a high stress job as an executive coach. I'm in very intense conversations with people all day long in the workplace. And I started to ask myself bigger questions based upon my mom passed away suddenly of a heart attack when she was 62. My dad died of complications from a stroke when he was 78, when he was in great health. It had happened very, very quickly. And I started asking myself bigger questions because I was having anxiety. I wasn't managing my stress well. My sleep started to get crazy. I was heading into menopause. I just was worried all of the time. And I knew that I didn't want a quick fix. I wanted to look deeper what was really going on. And so I found my way to you. And one of the things that really changed for me very, very quickly is the care and the time you take to explain what is actually at the root of what's happening. And it isn't a quick fix. It is investigation. It is trial and error. It is a lot of natural supplements and things that work with your natural body chemistry. And it isn't necessarily only a pharmacological approach to things. And I just found your style to be warm, inviting, fun, lighthearted. Um, and you've just been such a key part of like my team, if you will, my
Mm,
personal, my professional team. And I'd love for you to talk about, I mean, this is Jeannie's experience with you, but I'd love for you to talk about your approach. So somebody reaches out, they get to your team, they go through their blood work process, and they get to meet Dr. Wendy Warner. Talk to us about your approach.
okay. Well, like all functional medicine practitioners, or at least good ones, I need to know your basic medical background, and I need to know your family history, and I need to know how you live your life.
Mm.
Like, I have a nutritionist slash coach who does intakes for me for all my new patients so that we can get a really detailed feel for how is this person eating? Is this person sleeping? Is there any exercise on board? Blah, blah, blah. Because we need to see the whole picture. Yeah, I get lab work that is very different from what most primary care practitioners, for instance, would get, because I need to see as much detail as possible. And I will, like most practitioners who do this kind of medicine, you know how you get your lab report and it'll have the reference range there
Mhm.
next to it, and it may or may not be flagged as abnormal. And I know you've had this experience where I've said, oh yeah, it actually doesn't look as good as you think, because we're going to look at these reference ranges
Yes.
differently,
Yes.
because we're looking for optimal ranges,
Mm.
not just what the lab says is okay. Because sometimes what conventional medicine would consider okay is really not optimal by any means. And sometimes the lab references, there's no science behind them. They just run the test on a couple thousand random people and plot all the results on a bell curve. And that's the reference range. So you need to understand that, because otherwise you're going to miss a lot of detail. And so basically, I'm looking for all the clues in what you've told me and in your labs and in your symptoms. And I put it all together into, okay, well, this process is out of whack and this process is out of whack. And I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but sometimes when I'm telling people all the different things that are like, well, this is off and this is off and this is off and this is off, I see their eyes getting really big and they're thinking, oh my God, I'm so screwed. And I'll
Yes.
have to go, no, you've got all these different things going on, but they're all related. And because they're
Mm.
all related, we just need to fix this and this and this. And all the rest of it is going to take care of itself.
I want to build on the word optimal that you just talked about, and get you to talk about common themes. So what are some of the common themes you're seeing with patients? So
Mm,
when you think about this notion, you're looking for optimal. It's not perfect, it's optimal, which I think is also an important distinction. There's no A in this,
yes.
speaking from somebody who's always looking for, am I hitting the optimal performance number? It's like, no, there's no perfection here.
Right.
But I'd love for you to talk about like the common situations, themes, challenges that you're seeing in your practice.
Well, I can tell you the two things that I talk about all day long. I talk about adrenal dysfunction and I talk about um, blood sugar instability. Because, I mean, historically, I've always had a small group of people in my patient population who've had unstable blood sugar. And most Americans, well, most people around the world, their adrenal hormones are a little off. But it has gotten so much worse in the past couple years. I spend all day talking to people about blood sugar instability, and that's a good example. Well, actually, both of these are examples of how your lab results may make it look like you're okay, but you have to
Mm.
be asking the right questions and drawing the right labs and then interpreting them correctly. So, good example. Hypoglycemia. That means your blood sugar's crashing. periodically. People feel that, well, if you're 20 or 30 something, you call it getting hangry, because you're really angry if you haven't eaten. Other people will just say, well, yeah, sometimes if I haven't eaten, I get a little dizzy for a second, or I'll crash if I eat, a really starch heavy meal. That's blood sugar instability. Well, if you're a conventional doc, I was trained, you get a fasting blood sugar. And if it's normal, meaning it's under 100, the patient's good. And so even though this person feels crappy, you've just told them that they're okay. Well, I would look at the fasting glucose and what's called a hemoglobin A1C. That's a 3-month average blood sugar. And I would also get a fasting insulin. All right. That paints a different picture, because in somebody with hypoglycemia who feels the way I just described, their fasting glucose might be fine in the 90s, perfectly okay. Their hemoglobin A1C might be way down at the bottom of the normal range, like 4.8. Well, okay, if their fasting glucose is on the higher end of the normal range, how do you end up with an average that is that much lower? Well, that kind of by definition is hypoglycemia. And that matches with how the patient feels. And so the person is not only validated, because you know how many people come to me going, I feel like crap and my doc keeps telling me I'm okay, because they just didn't ask the right questions. But it also lets me then monitor over time as we go to fix the problem. Are those numbers matching up?
And
Does that make sense?
it does. I'm living that
Well,
story you just talked about. I also love for you to talk a little bit more about adrenals, particularly how stress is impacting our adrenal system.
okay. We're going to talk about how stress not only impacts the adrenals, but also how that impacts all of our health. Like I said, all of us, I mean, we have a crazy society where we all live way too fast in sympathetic overdrive all the time. And there was a time where we could kind of deal with it and it wouldn't really bother us all that much, most of us. But in the past few years, I mean, I think it kind of started during quarantine. We all lost our resiliency. So now when we live these crazy busy lives, our adrenals are trying to do the fight and flight reaction day in and day out. And that becomes very dysfunctional. I mean, cortisol is a good thing. You need it to get out of an emergency. You need it to get up in the morning. But the fight and flight reaction is only supposed to last this long. It's not supposed to be every day. So if you're asking your adrenals to pour out this adrenaline and cortisol all the time, they'll do it. But in order to do that, their function becomes abnormal, because this other hormone that's supposed to balance you out, called DHEA keeps you calm and happy during the emergency. Well, you can't do both. So if the cortisol is really high, your DHEA gets lower and lower and lower. And so that starts messing things up. So the adrenals get tired, and you can go from, all the way to being overly active to limping along, barely able to make any cortisol. Now, over time, that starts messing with almost everything in our bodies. Because think about it, our adrenals only have one real job, and that's to keep you alive. That's kind of an important job. So they get to interfere with pretty much anything they want to. For instance, they will tell your insulin, hey, listen, we're running away from a tiger right now. I don't know when I'm going to eat again. So I'm going to block you, because I actually need this glucose, because I don't know when I'm going to run again. So when I'm going to eat again. So it'll block the insulin, and that throws off your glucose metabolism. And it either makes you initially hypoglycemic, and then eventually could lead to diabetes. Because it doesn't know, your adrenals don't know you're going to do this for the next, 10 years. They think you're going to do it for 5 minutes. They will mess with your sleep because, if there's an emergency, your body doesn't want you in a deep, dark sleep. It wants you sort of, one ear open, just in case. It'll make you live in your midbrain too much. Our midbrain does emergencies. Our midbrain is really good at getting us out of trouble, but it doesn't remember things because that's not its job. So that's why when people are really stressed out, they start getting that weird brain fog and they can't remember anything. Like even as something as simple as, where did I put my car keys? And, oh, dang, I just met this woman last week. What is her name?
Yeah. Or why am I in this room? What did I come in here for?
You walk in, well, and it also makes you really distractible.
Oh.
So if you realize that you can't stay focused on anything, that's almost always an adrenal thing, because think about it. The amygdala, the midbrain, the emergency brain doesn't want you focused on one thing. It wants you scanning the horizon all the time for the next emergency. So you walk into a room to do something, you don't get around to doing that. You notice something else. So you do that. And then that sent you to another room and you do that and you do that and you do that. And you never did do the first thing. Yeah.
Boy, you're describing a lot of my life. Very
well,
often.
not just you. I think it's a lot of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love for you to share. I mean, you have so many tools and perspectives in your toolkit that are so interesting. But beyond supplements, I'd love for you to talk about, like, particularly around managing cortisol and the stress response. I'd love for you to talk about some ideas you have and some results you've seen.
Okay. I do always use some kind of supplements. There's a whole category of herbs called adaptogens. They are very helpful. And I honestly think at this point, I don't know a single person who couldn't benefit from some adaptogens. However, I always couch it in these terms. You've got to remember they're just herbs. So if you're taking herbs to support your adrenals, but you're still living your life like a tiger's chasing you, the tiger's going to win. So it's our job to constantly tell our adrenals, we're fine. You can settle down. Yes, we have a problem. It is not life-threatening. Now, I sort of figured this out really early on in my own career about how much adrenals are going to bother me. And it's relatively, I don't know, it's an interesting story, I think, because I don't know, I was 32 or 33. I was a conventional OBGYN. I'm sitting in the delivery room at 3 or 4 in the morning and talking to the night nurses, waiting on a baby to show up. And honestly, we were gossiping about some of my older colleagues who were about 10 years older. So they'd been doing this longer, and they were all getting sick. Now, the guy who ate donuts all the time, we expected him to get diabetes. Yeah, okay, fine. But there were 2 guys that were athletes. One was a runner, one was a cyclist. They ate well. I mean, I saw them. I saw them eating lunch and dinner in the delivery room. And despite that, one got hypertension anyway, and the other one got an autoimmune disorder and became an insomniac. Now, obstetricians can sleep anywhere, so that was like really weird. And we're sitting around talking about how weird it was, because these guys appeared to be doing a pretty good job taking care of themselves. And all of a sudden this light bulb went off and I went, oh, guys, it's this. And the nurses went, what do you mean? I went, we're awake at 3 in the morning all the time. That makes our body think there's a problem because we should be asleep. And it was all those emergencies that we dealt with in the delivery room and in the operating room and in the ER. And I'm the first one to admit I was an adrenaline junkie. That was the fun part of my job. Because I always used to say, well, if a baby's going to come out easy, you don't even need me. A cabbie can do that. So that's when I had this light bulb moment when I went, oh, I really love this work and it's going to make me sick in 10 years. So I don't want that to happen. So I had to go do some research because unfortunately they never really talked to you much in med school about adrenal function. So I had to go find, how can I fix this? And it turns out the science shows two things. Our adrenal glands want to see a quiet brain on a regular basis. Now, I don't know anybody who does that unless, I mean, that's not normal. That's not normal for humans, right? We have to go like do it on purpose. So that's any kind of meditative technique, seated meditation. I did seated meditation alone for a long time. Honestly, in the past few years, that is more difficult for me now. I can't stay focused as easily. So I've added in a practice called Qigong, which is a part of Chinese medicine. Actually, it's like a moving meditation. And I also ran across the research for the Institute of Heart Math. Now, the Institute of Heart Math has been looking at this for, 30 years, how our adrenals respond to what the brain says, but the brain determines our safety based on our emotions. And what it comes down to is every single negative emotion gets interpreted as crap, we're in trouble, and it tells the adrenals to stay turned on. Okay. Anger and fear, you need to do the fight and flight reaction. That makes sense. But it's every negative emotion, anger and fear and pain and sadness and worry and brain chatter. Because brain chatter, even though we're all kind of used to it, it looks to our body like anxiety. So, I mean, think of your adrenals sort of watching you going, okay, I don't see a tiger, but she's still planning things and she's still worried about stuff. So there must be something going on. So they'll just stay turned on if you do a lot of brain chatter. Now, the good news is what they found out is that positive emotions do the exact opposite. If your brain sees that you're feeling grateful and joyous and excited and happy, it sort of figures there's no tiger back there, because who in their right mind would, feel good if they were still in trouble? So they took all that data, they came up with these techniques that are kind of like a meditation, but the difference is instead of just trying to be quiet, you are actively creating a positive emotion on purpose, sort of in a ritualized way, because like you're hanging out in a old memory and you have to actually recreate the feelings. By the way, I did that entirely wrong for the whole first year. I taught myself how to do it. I thought I was doing it right. I was actually just thinking about positive emotions. I wasn't actually feeling positive emotions. Took me a little while to figure that part out. But they've shown, and they've over and over and over again, under lots and lots of different situations, you can get your adrenals back to normal, doing their techniques correctly, within 4 to 6 months. Most people can get it under control if they actually do it, and if they do it correctly and they do it enough. That's a lot of variables.
Well, the enough part, I mean, I'm as a student to this, the way that I characterize is it sort of cuts the noise right down the middle. And you're inserting a different, like I use like an energy or frequency. You're changing the dynamics of what's going on in that circumstance. And sometimes when I'm doing it, I'll just start humming. I know it sounds weird, but I'll just start humming to get me into that space where I'm like, remember a time when you felt happy. Remember a time when you felt relaxed. Remember a time you felt safe. Haven't mastered it, but that's how I think just even the act of doing the breathing around it also is just it's like a quick way to get yourself in a different state.
Yes.
And if you're in a different state, you have more optionality. You can start to do, I think, these techniques in a really powerful way.
Yeah.
I also am very curious, like, what's the future of functional medicine? Like, how is it going to play a bigger role in the world of medicine from your vantage point?
I'm hoping that, well, let's put it this way. It's going to have to change from the ground up. It is not going to change from the top down. Our medical system is too entrenched in the whole concept of insurance providers and pharmaceuticals and all of that kind of stuff. What I believe and what I'm finding more and more is that people are really disappointed in that system, and they don't feel as though they're getting the kind of care that they really need, especially for long-term chronic conditions. Because the medicine I was taught is about fixing problems. It's not about helping people be healthy.
Mm.
And people would prefer, many people, not everybody, many people would prefer to learn how to be healthy and not have to deal with just, well, let me, play whack-a-mole, fix a problem, fix a problem, fix a problem. They're getting irritated with that. So I'm hoping that there will be enough groundswell from patient demand that it's going to work. Now, there's a couple of things that are on the horizon that I think eventually insurance providers are going to pay attention to. The VA, believe it or not, is already on board. The VA has been interested in integrative functional medicine, and they're a big proponent of heart math, by the way, because it makes sense to them. I mean, think about it. They have a mandate to take care of their soldiers and to get them back, to function as quickly as possible, and they have a limited budget. So it's the limited budget that pushes them because they just want to know what works. And this kind of medicine works really well for chronic illness, and it is a lot cheaper than conventional medicine. Now, there's also Cleveland Clinic, really well-known, big clinic, right? They have a functional medicine department that was started by my friend Mark Hyman, and Patrick Hanaway was one of the first medical directors. And they're gathering data to prove that for many different chronic illnesses, they're not only at least as good as conventional medicine, but they often get better outcomes than conventional medicine, and they are saving the system a ton of money. And they're getting hard data to prove this, so that Cleveland Clinic's on board. They have a huge backlog of people trying to get into that practice, into that part of Cleveland Clinic. And I think especially people who are self-insured, organizations like Cleveland Clinic and other large organizations, if you have to pay for your own insurance, you want to spend your money and get the most bang for your buck. And I think for chronic illness, this is as effective, more effective, and definitely cheaper. Now, we still need conventional medicine. It does great for emergencies. I mean, I was really glad 8 or 10 years ago when I fractured my ankle that I had an ER with an X-ray machine that could help me. I wasn't going to just do acupuncture.
Right.
I did that for recovery. So for the current conventional model, the current conventional medicine does really, really well for acute care medicine. But they don't do well with chronic illness. They just spend too much money for chronic illness because they're not getting to the heart of the matter.
Do you find with your patient base that you have to collaborate with other doctors outside of this functional space?
Yeah. And what sometimes happens is that the poor patient is stuck between two people that they trust and like, who are telling them completely different things.
Yeah.
And I do apologize to patients for that all the time, but I can show them the research and I can walk them through the science and explain to them why my approach may make more sense. And their other doc usually can't do that.
I would love for you to share with us, who do you follow? Like who are the voices that inspire, influence your thought, or even the research bodies, and why do you follow them?
I'm going to tell you two different things. I'm going to tell you the people that, if this whole idea of integrative functional medicine is new and you want to learn about it, I can tell you the people you should follow. I mean, I kind of keep an eye on what they do. Mark Hyman is a well-known name.
Mhm.
Mark's been around a long time. He's been with functional medicine from the very beginning. He's got a gazillion books out there. He has done an excellent job of getting information out and explaining to the world what functional medicine is. And I will give him a lot of credit. He is currently working hard to change in Congress what we do with like the farm budget. Because if we don't change the food system in this country, we'll never get well. So Mark Hyman is a good person to follow. The Institute for Functional Medicine has really good information on their social media all the time. The PLMI, Personal Lifestyle, I'm going to mess up their name. Personal Lifestyle Institute, Personal Lifestyle Medicine Institute, PLMI. That was founded by Jeff Bland, who is the founder of functional medicine. It's an organization that is doing research, and they also have like, they basically get people together and share research. They have a cool conference every year, and their social media has got really good information on it as well. I am currently personally interested more and more in regenerative farming and how to get our food system to change. So Mark's a big name. He can go talk to Congress. They don't want to talk to me. I want to go help my farm friends. I mean, I live in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Very close by is where all the farms are. 90% of the food that I ingest, I know who raised it.
Wow.
Both animals and plants. And what makes me nervous, and what makes a lot of people nervous, is that the average age of an American farmer is in the 50s. We have to convince young people to farm. Who's going to do it?
Right.
And I'm interested in learning about people who have taken the idea of regenerative farming and putting it into a bigger scale to make it financially more important and more reasonable. Because, you know, most of our farmland, it's ridiculous what we do to that land. You know, we're doing monocultures that are unhealthy. So the Rodale Institute, which is not too far from me, about an hour north, they do a regenerative agriculture conference every year, and it's next September. It's next month in September, and I'm going to that. So I'll get to meet some folks who are doing this work and see how I can help get the word out.
I love that. Well, now I want to talk about you and what you're working on. So we have to do a little revealing out of your own personal life. So like from a health and well-being perspective, what are you working on for yourself?
Building muscle, and I'm not happy about it. Yeah. So menopausal women lose muscle easily. And although I have been active all my life, strength training has never really been very high on my priority list. I did it when I was right out of residency because I was in such bad shape. And I have to admit, I liked being strong, and I liked how I looked. I looked awesome. But the reality was I was mostly hiding in the basement from my first husband because we weren't getting along very well. So I kind of have this emotional thing about strength training. But I've been looking more and more at the research and on the appropriate way to gain muscle. It's all about lifting heavy things. Because, you know, those of us of a certain age, remember how when we were younger, we were told, well, if you're going to exercise, do a lot of cardio because you'll burn off a lot of calories and you'll stay slender. And if you want to do weights, have them be small and do like 10,000 reps.
Yep.
Well, that just doesn't work if you're menopausal. menopausal muscle and bone wants really heavy lifting. So I am working on that, and it's rocking my world. I'm not happy about it.
Deadlifts. Are you going to CrossFit or what?
Well, right this minute, I'm still working from home to get ready to do that kind of stuff. No, CrossFit isn't even the right thing. You have to do, there's a doc, she's a exercise physiologist who does research on women. Go figure. Her name is Dr. Stacy Sims. She was a speaker at a conference that I organized this for Institute for Functional Medicine. Her research is amazing. I mean, she has people doing very small number of lifts, but you're doing to 80% capacity.
Wow. 80%.
She goes, she
Wow.
goes, basically, if you do 8 reps, knowing you could do 2 more with good form.
Wow. Very interesting.
So as much as you can, and then you just rest for a little while. And she goes, it's basically like HIIT, like with cardio.
Mm-hmm.
You do really high intensity, but you don't have to do a whole lot of it. And she goes, and just think, when you get to that point, you're saving time.
Yeah. I love this. All right. So here's my last question. I want you to just take a step back and look out into the future. It's 5 to 10 years from now. What is Dr. Wendy Warner doing, and how are you having an impact?
Okay. I'm going to have to teach you that these kind of thoughts are silly, because when I was 30 something, I sat down for the first time with a financial advisor, and they said, tell me where you're going to be in 20 years. I was 100% sure. I was 99% wrong. I was in the same house, not married to the same person, not in the same job. So, because crap happens. All right, 5 to 10 years. 5 years, I'll probably be doing pretty much exactly what I'm doing right now. 10 years. I don't know. I mean, I basically, I spend part of my day, I spend a lot of my time seeing patients directly. I spend a lot of my time teaching. I imagine over time, the proportion of that will change, and I'll spend a lot more time teaching and writing and a lot less time seeing individual patients. I honestly don't see myself. My mom asked me this recently this summer. Are you planning on retiring at any point? And I like the way she worded that. She said,
any
at
point.
any point.
Yeah.
I'm 64, so I'm starting to get that question a lot. And she's 96. And she just goes, I don't know. Are you planning on doing it at any point? I go, I can't imagine not working. Now, I do want to learn to play a little more. And I don't want to work the way I always have in terms of the number of hours every week. But yeah, I can't imagine not at least still teaching.
I'm so grateful that you are doing what you're doing in the world. And I mean, you've had such an impact on my life, and that then I can have an impact on other people's lives. And I'm so, so grateful that you shared all that you did here today. And I know that you have just helped numerous people just by what you shared in this conversation. So, Dr. Warner, so grateful.
I thank you. And I want to say one thing. You're the kind of patient we all want, because you are willing to go, okay, you're right. Let me try this. As opposed to just immediately block. No, I'm not going to do it. No, I'm not going to do it. Even because if a patient doesn't want to change, I can have all of the tools. I can offer all kinds of tools. But if the person doesn't want to change, I mean, you're a coach. You know how that goes.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. As I said in the beginning, it's not a quick fix. It takes time. It takes revision. It takes measurement. But the way that I look at it is I want to live better. I want to do better. I want to feel good. I want to be happy. I'm not looking for the perfect experience, but there's so much to learn, and I've grown so much because of this experience. And so I'm thrilled to just bring your message to my world.
Yeah. I think if people can just realize how much better they will feel emotionally and physically when they take better care of themselves. That's really the only message I want to get across.
Yeah, I love it.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Warriors at Work show. If you are interested in learning more about what we do at the Warriors at Work show and platform, be sure to go over to my website, Jeannie Coomber, and subscribe to my monthly Warrior Playbook newsletter. I share everything that I'm up to month by month, as well as some lessons and insights that I've learned. I'm also interested in hearing any feedback you have about this conversation or future topics. So reach out to me directly on jc@jeanniecoomber.com or on LinkedIn. Be sure to tell your friends and your colleagues about this Warriors at Work conversation. Subscribe, review, and rate us. It's the best way to get this message out into the world. Be well.